recognizable face of Magic on the right there, and they're going to get right to the action. And Josh Wiitanen is playing green-black Constellation. Brian Kibler is playing his Temur Monsters deck that he has been well known for playing these last couple weeks.
For anyone who watched the coverage yesterday, you got to see Josh actually qualify for this tournament playing this deck. You got to see him win his Wiitanen for day two. Now we get to see him playing against one of the most recognizable players in the world.
Yeah, and speaking of watching folks on coverage, you got to see Brian Kibler doing exactly what he's doing here, playing turn 2 Sylvan Caryatids with his Temur Monsters deck. And I believe that he's converted Shahar to the Temur team after his performance yesterday on camera here at CardMageddon.
Do you believe that the shellacking that Shahar took on camera yesterday had anything to do with it?
It's possible, but you know, I think that Shahar may have been impacted, but also I think he can come up with his own decisions for himself. I think that he should be locked into the 75 that he won the World Championship with, personally.
He should just have to play it.
Both players have a Sylvan Caryatid on turn 2, with Brian on the play. He was able to get his first, with his deck with so many 4-drops, 4 Pelucranos World Eater, 4 Ashcloud Phoenix, as well as 4 Savage Knuckleblade that can gain haste, as we see here.
This looks like a replay of the games that Kibler played on video yesterday, where he just had a lot of Savage Knuckleblades every game.
And a lot of Sylvan Caryatids on turn 2.
His deck is a lot better with Caryatid on turn 2.
Josh Wiitanen is playing the green-black Constellation deck. By looking at the deck list, is there anything particularly unique about his list? What's different? What's the same?
Yeah, we talked about a few things yesterday, and there is a little bit of a difference. There's a one-of in the main and the sideboard of Reaper of the Wild.
Okay.
Now, this card is really, really good right now in the fact that it can attack into the other 4/5s and 4/6s of the format and give itself Death Touch. So it actually wins fights with Rhinos and Doomwake Giants.
And Savage Knuckleblades and Pelucranos, as we see a Thoughtseize from Josh this turn sees 2 copies of the World Eater, a Shivan Reef, and another Savage Knuckleblade.
Not to mention, when you Doomwake Giant tokens with this card in play, the amount of scry triggers you get.
Oh, you do get quite a few if your opponent's playing Hordling Outbursts and Raise the Alarms.
So Whedon's Thoughtseize takes a Savage Knuckleblade here, and then he's going to use a Savage Cut on the Savage Knuckleblade. This is a great turn for Josh.
Yep, taking out 2 Knuckleblades with 2 black spells.
Josh's Murderous Cuts are going to be really, really good in this matchup. The fact that he can do 2 things in a turn, like play a threat and have a cheap removal spell, because Kiblers are all 4 and 5 mana, is going to help get him some virtual card advantage, some virtual tempo advantage.
Kibler drops one of the 2 copies of Pelucranos that were left in his hand. You see the Ascension sleeves on Kibler's deck there. He is a game designer. He works for Stoneblade Entertainment, which designs Ascension as well as Soulforge. He was also one of the first designers on the original team for the World of Warcraft trading card game that later helped inspire Hearthstone, that he is also a player of.
Actually, this is a pretty cool matchup of Versus
it
players.
is, you're right. You might have expected to see this matchup in the Versus Pro Tour, the first Versus Pro Tour winner, Brian Kibler, and 2-time 10K champion, Josh Wiitanen.
It would be pretty cool if we could actually just had some Versus decks. And
Can we just get Teen Titans versus Gorilla Grodd Dredge going on? I think that, actually Kibler I don't think ever played Gorilla Grodd, but I think Kibler was more on the Sinister Six plan, if I recall correctly. He might have played Checkmate.
I'm actually pretty unfamiliar with the game. I knew of the names of some of the things, but I was actually...
The game was great. If anybody knows what decks Brian Kibler was known for playing in Versus, please tweet them at us, #CardMageddon. Because I would certainly be interested in knowing what he was known for playing, because he's certainly known for playing this style of deck, red and green creatures. So we're going to see a Boon Satyr bestowed onto Pelucranos, attacking in for 9 damage. Dropping Josh to 4?
Yeah, that's the magic number for Brian's deck, because he has a lot of hasting creatures with 4 damage. He has Stormbreath Dragon and Savage Knuckleblade, so now Josh is behind the 8 ball here. He's definitely going to have to interact with everything Kibler does for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and his hand is not particularly good either. He's got 2 lands and another Sylvan Caryatid.
Yeah, we're flooding out pretty hard here.
Yep. We do have Pharika, God of Affliction, in play, so any creature that goes to our graveyard then becomes a Death Toucher. For the low cost of green-black.
So, going into the last round, during the interview, there was 1 match left over in time, and it was Josh Wiitanen playing against an Abzan Whip deck.
Yeah.
And I watched him win the match by Thoughtseizing himself so he could whip a Hornet Queen, and then casting an Into Garruk's Wake the next turn.
Wow. Into Garruk's Wake is big game.
Or just in Garruk's Wake. But
in Garruk's Wake. Well, it is hunting bigger.
But he went into Garruk's Wake.
I understand, yeah. So here's a Reaper of the Wilds. And that's a Stormbreath Dragon in the air, which can't be blocked. by Josh Wiitanen's Ground Pounders, and that is going to be game 1 in favor of Brian Kibler.
Now, we didn't talk about this deck too much yesterday besides when Kibler was on stream. Hi, welcome back to the booth. I'm Tannon. This is Reuben Bresler.
Hi, sorry. I'm trying to wake up still.
Right. I think Timber Monsters is actually a pretty good choice for this weekend.
I agree, yeah.
Especially if you draw like Brian Kibler does.
Well, sure. Yeah, his deck of 4 Sylvan Caryatid, 4 Rattleclaw Mystic means that he's going to be able to have 4 mana on turn 3 a lot, and he's able to take advantage of that much of the time with Savage Knuckleblade, Polukranos, and 4 copies of Ashcloud Phoenix. I was actually talking with, and he's also got 2 Xenagos the Reveler, just for more 4-drops on turn 3. I was talking with Kibler on Facebook or on Twitter, I forget which one it was, when I was talking about the red green deck that I was playing last weekend. He said that Ashcloud Phoenix is one of, if not the best creature in Standard right now.
Right. The fact that it's just a recursive threat is awesome. For those of you who don't know, the Ashcloud Phoenix is a 4/1 flyer, and that when it, with Morph, but when it dies, it comes back into play face down.
Yep.
It costs 6 mana to turn back up, and when it does, it shocks both players. Like, both players take 2 damage. But this is fine. It's actually one of the best cards against any deck that has 1-for-1 removal.
Yep. A lot of the time, it's literally just a 4/1 that becomes a 2/2 and then dies.
Right. That's fine, though.
And that's fine, though. It has two lives. It has Undying, basically, or Persist, or whichever one you want to refer to, whenever you started playing. Both are very powerful. It's just a very powerful recursive threat. It's a little bit awkward against a Doomwake Giant deck.
Right. We were talking about this before the match started.
Yeah.
I think it's awkward against Doomwake Giant. This is one of the matchups where it actually won't shine, but it's actually good in practically every other matchup. Against the blue-black control deck we saw round 1, it's like one of your best cards. It's actually very good against aggro decks. You can just continuously trade,
Yep.
which is what you want to do.
And decks that are Abzan Whip that don't have Doomwake Giants, if they don't happen to have a Doomwake Giant in their hand, or if they don't have it in their deck, it's very good against them as well, because the only flying threats that they have, they are cutting their Wingmate Rocks. So the only flying threats they have are 7 mana Hornet Queens.
So they have the Abzan Charm. That's like pretty much the only out they have to at that point.
So looking at the sideboards, starting with Josh, because he's going to be on the play, what are you looking for to bring in?
All right, well, he's got 2 Reclamation Sages, 2 Read the Bones, a Thoughtseize, a Reaper of the Wild, a Garruk Apex Predator, an In Garruk's Wake, 2 Arbor Colossus, 3 Heroes Downfall, and 2 Bioblight. I think the Arbor Colossus and Heroes Downfalls are just a for sure inclusion, including possibly the Thoughtseize, depending on what kind of game he wants to play. Knowing what Kibler's going to do for the next turn or 2 is pretty big, so you can sequence correctly. Plus, getting 1 or 2 threats out of his hand and having 1 removal spell will generally be good enough for Josh to win this game, since he'll actually have a mana advantage most of these games.
Meanwhile, over in Brian Kibler's sideboard, he's got 4 full copies of Disdainful Stroke, which are very good against all of the Abzan deck, countering Siege Rhino, Whip of Erebos, Doomwake Giant, etc. 2 Lightning Strike, 2 Magma Spray, 3 Arc Lightning, 1 extra copy of Stubborn Denial, of which he has 3 in the main deck, 1 Barrage of Boulders, and 2 Destructive Revelry. I would expect the Disdainful Strokes to come in. I think that the Destructive Revelries will also come in, as they are able to take down not only Courser of Krufix and Doomwake Giant, but also Whip of Erebos. And I think that the 1 extra Stubborn Denial is not only good when you're able to cast it with Ferocious, but against this deck, it's trying to curve out a lot of the time, play a 2-drop, then a 4-drop, then a 5-drop, or a 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, or needs to play multiple spells in the same turn. Just force spiking people is good enough.
Stubborn Denial is one of my favorite cards in the format against Murderous Cut. It almost always counters Murderous Cut, even without Ferocious.
Yep, absolutely. And so I would expect the extra copy of Stubborn Denial to be making an appearance. I think the Barrage of Boulders is a possibility, just in case he has to take out his Ashcloud Phoenixes. His only remaining flyers are Stormbreath Dragons. It's somewhat difficult to close out a game with a 5-mana 4/4 flyer, especially against a deck that has that much elimination. And making his Ground Pounders unable to block, I think, is a good way to try to finish off a game. I'm not 100% on it coming in.
I think we see it more likely on the play than on the draw, but it's very possible. I mean, it's mostly there for like token-based decks, while still having, fringe uses and other matchups like this one, where if you think though it's going to be a board stall at some point in time casting this card, you can just get 16 damage in play without them being ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that the Barrage of Boulders is safely in the sideboard, but it is a good card. I want people to keep that one in mind.
I know it's one of your favorites.
It's one of my favorites. I think it's great. So we're going to cut down to the action of showing the guys shuffling, talking to each other there. There's Brian Kibler. Very recognizable face of Magic the Gathering, wearing a Magic Online Championship Series shirt, I believe.
Humble brag.
And we got Josh Wiitanen there on the left. Yesterday was wearing a Jite Gaming shirt, which is a collection of stores in the Vegas area. He is a former Vegas local, currently living in California. He has himself, by the way, 12 versus Series 10K top 8s, which is the equivalent of a GP. That's 12. The equivalent of 12 GP top 8s. In a short amount of time, the GP system for Magic has been around a lot longer than the 10K system was for Versus.
Right, and as you mentioned earlier, the deck Teen Titans, if I remember correctly, I think Josh was known as one of the best pilots, or if not the best pilot of it in the world at one point in time.
Teen Titans, by the way, is an equivalent of basically sort of, I guess it's kind of similar to Jeskai Ascendancy, actually. It untaps your creatures, and then you do some things, then you untap all your creatures, and you do some things. You know, we might be able to talk to him about Jeskai Ascendancy later and see if that brings back some Teen Titans memories.
Josh, I know personally, so I know his deck preference. He's generally more of a combo player. So a deck like Jeskai Ascendancy is definitely right up his alley. And it looks like we do have an update from the sideboard. What happened, Eric?
Okay, so it looks like Eric is down a game. Eric Froelich is down a game to Ben Lundquist in our other feature match that we have going on. So Ben Lundquist with blue-black control. Your pick to win the tournament.
I believe Eric is also playing an Abzan deck. So again, just a great matchup for Ben this round.
Absolutely. And since Ben Lundquist is your pick, I kind of need to pick somebody. I think that looking around the room, there are some very solid players here, I gotta say. We got Trey Van Cleve battling here. We have Jonathan Job battling, and we got some of our grinder winners from yesterday. I'm actually going to go out on a limb.
Okay.
I'm going to say that Andrew Batnich, who was our modern qualifier from yesterday with Red-Green Heroic, already won round 1. He's playing round 2. Looks like he's up against, he's next to Dave Williams. He may, but I think that he's a solid pick. He's very confident in his deck choices. He came up to us yesterday and was like, this is how I'm getting into day 2. Smashed through the modern field. I like his attitude. He's an under-the-radar pick.
Yeah, man called his shot. He seems very, very confident in his abilities.
Certainly did. So I'll go out on a limb and say Andrew Batnich is my pick, as we're seeing these guys shuffle up for game 2. Looks like Josh Wiitanen is going to be on the mulligan.
Am I allowed to pick a backup?
Sure.
I'm going to go with Kibler and Timber Monsters.
I mean, if we were doing a fantasy draft,
yeah, of course,
then that's a pretty darn safe pick.
Yep.
And so it looks like Josh is going to be on the mulligan to 5 here. Up against the wall on the play, Brian is going to have a 3-card, the concentrate advantage, as I like to call it.
Yeah, this is the nightmare scenario for Josh. Not only is he on the play, but he's mulliganing to 5 against a deck that needs very specific answers against.
Yep.
That's the reason why I like Timur. I always like actually thinking about it from other perspectives, like playing the blue-black control deck against it, and a lot of your spells game 1 don't match up well, because we're moving towards a matchup between Ben Lundquist and Brian Kibler. Every round they get closer and closer to playing each other. They just keep winning.
Another couple players that I would keep an eye on here are, of course, round 1, our backup feature match winner, Jonathan Kohler, is playing Blue-White Heroic. We'll certainly get him on camera at some point today. He's playing a deck that not a lot of people are prepared for a super aggressive strategy here. A lot of people are playing these mid-range Black-Green Constellation, Abzan Whip style decks, perhaps not ready for the Voltron. We also have Dave Williams, World Series of Poker celebrity and winner, and also my former roommate, Dave Williams, who is in the room here today.
There are a lot of bracelets in the room today, actually.
There are a lot of bracelets in the room today.
For those of you who don't know, bracelets are what you get for winning World Series of Poker.
Series, yeah. We got a lot of very talented folks, and also Zach Rayburn is a player who qualified yesterday. He's a Las Vegas-based judge who is battling today, trying to get himself on the same pedestal as our Hall of Famers, bracelet winners, and so forth. As we are continuing our coverage of Josh Wiitanen against Brian Kibler, Black-Green Constellation against Timber Monsters. Josh does not have a turn 2 play. Instead, he plays Nykthos Shrine to Nyx as his second land and does not have a Sylvan Caryatid, while Brian Kibler does have Rattleclaw Mystic.
Now, Josh played a Wooded Foothills in turn 1 and a Shrine to Nyx in turn 2 without cracking his Wooded Foothills.
Yeah.
It's a clear sign that he doesn't have a third land, especially the way he's drawing his card here this turn. It looks like this is going to be a very, very quick game.
Unfortunate for Josh.
Unfortunate for Josh.
Not able to put together too much here as he's just passing the turn with his 2 lands in play. Brian Kibler, meanwhile, is going to be able to play a 4-drop. That's Pelukrinos the World Eater. That's his game plan, is play a 2-mana Mana Accelerator and then play a 4-drop.
Yeah. He also has a copy of Stubborn Denial in his hand already. So Josh getting back in this game is going to be very, very difficult. It starts with drawing a land this turn. If he doesn't, this game is actually close to over already.
Yeah, he has Hero's Downfall and he has Courser Prefix in his hand, but looks like it's not going to be quite good enough. As we see Stormbreath Dragon coming down. We're going to fetch for a forest.
You hold on there, buddy. You don't attack just yet. I have an ability.
All right.
I think Josh just wanted to do a gameplay action before he scooped up his cards
here. And so
here.
Brian Kibler is going to win 2 games to 0 over Josh Wiitanen. Here, moving to 2-0 with Temur Monsters here at CardMageddon, the most explosive Magic event of 2014. Quite an impressive showing from the Temur Monsters player.
Right. Well, I mean, it was definitely an impressive showing. Both games he had in a Mana Accelerator on turn 2, into a 4-drop on turn 3, and a 5-drop on turn 4. It's exactly how he draws up his decks.
Yep.
You know, this deck looks insane when you always have a Mana Accelerator on 2, and we have 8.
He has 8. He has twice as many as most players do. He's known for playing decks like this. He played in the World Championships with Thundermaw Hellkites and you know, Gruul War Chants, cards that people weren't usually playing at the time.
I got a funny story from Eric Froelich earlier today. He said that he was on a plane with Kibler to an event once, and Brian brought up his note section on his phone, and he said, I have like 50 deck lists in here. And you know how the note section of your phone, the first sentence is the name of the note? Every one of them said, For Elvish Mystic.
Yep.
Or every note was called For Sylvan Caryatid.
Yeah.
Because all of his decks started that way.
Of course.
He's like, I'll just fill in the rest from there. You know?
Yep, he only needs to, it's like playing Vintage. You know, when you play Vintage, you're like, all right, I'm definitely playing a Mox Sapphire.
Yeah.
Definitely playing a Black Lotus. I'm definitely playing a Recall. I only need to fill out another 45 cards from there.
It's like me playing Legacy. You just start with 4 Brainstorms.
Yep, 4 Brainstorms and probably 4 Volcanic Islands.
Yeah, usually Volcanic Island of some kind, yeah.
Yeah, with me it's like 10 mountains. All right, where do we go from there, right?
I need some grindstones.
Maybe Grindstone. I could play, you know.
We play Burn or something.
I can demonstrate my range with a Burn deck if I really needed to. So we're going to be moving, we're going to get a backup match for you here pretty soon with Ben Lundquist and Eric Froelich as our backup, which is going to be quite another good one. Both of these guys are good friends. They know each other for a long time, playing a little bit of a grudge match.